This video will show you how to replace your front strut and coil spring assembly on a Mazda 3. This is part of the front steering and suspension located behind the front wheel. A quick note about doing this job: once it's complete, you're going to want to get yourself a 4-wheel alignment. Let's get into it. A quick note about replacing the front strut assembly: whenever you do these, you do them as a pair. The process for one side of the vehicle is going to be the exact same thing as the other. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Once you've completed that, you're going to remove all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts and the wheel. Now that we removed the wheel, let's have a close look at this area right here along the back side of the brakes. We can see where our outer tie rod end connects to our steering knuckle. Now to dislodge this, you're going to find that you have a locking cotter pin. These come in all different shapes and sizes. Just go ahead and use some pliers or cutters, remove it. Once you have that out of there, just a quick inspection. If it looks like it's reusable, set it aside. Otherwise, dispose of it and replace it. We'll use a 17mm to loosen our mounting nut. Once it's off, just a quick inspection, and then we're going to start it back on a couple threads. We'll use some penetrant in this area. Continuing on, we need to separate the tie rod end from the knuckle. We don't want to cause any damage. I'm just going to carefully use my hammer, cause some vibration. The tie rod should drop down. The nut will prevent it from falling and potentially hurting anybody. Now we should be able to pivot this around. We're focusing on the axle nut next. For this, I'm using a 32mm socket. Once we've removed the nut, we'll use a hammer and punch directly in the center to break the axle free from the wheel bearing hub assembly. Now, once you have movement from here, we'll continue on. Now that we have that separated, we're making our way to where the flex hose connects to our front strut, right up in here. There's a metal clip. You can see the ear. Go ahead and take hold of that with some pliers. We'll pull it out of place and then remove the flex hose from the bracket as well. There we are, just an inspection of that. Slide the flex hose out of there. Close inspection of the flex hose. You want to make sure it's not cracked or damaged in any way. If it is, you just want to go ahead and replace it. Ours looks fine. Let's move just up the strut from there. This is where we can see our ABS wire mounting point. There's one of them here and there's one on the other side. For this one, typically you can give it a little wiggle and it should want to slide out of place. There we are. We'll just give that a quick inspection. Now we can make our way along the rearward side of the strut next. Now looking down along here, we can see the next mounting point. I'm just going to carefully pry this out of place here. I'm using a trim tool. Should be able to pull that right out of the front strut. There we are. Now we have plenty of slack from the ABS wheel speed sensor wire. We don't have to worry about causing damage at this point. We'll focus on the next 2 bolts right along here. There's 17mm headed mounting bolts coming through from the rear towards the front. And on the forward side here, we have 2 19mm mounting nuts, one on each bolt. Got my 17mm wrench. Now I'm just going to leave that bolt in place while I continue on to the next. Now we'll just lightly tap these out of place. Now as we start pulling this one out of here, make sure you're holding onto the steering knuckle and brakes. As we pull that out, we want to start pulling the knuckle away, but keep in mind the axle needs to be pulling out and away from the bearing at the same time. I'm just going to reach along from the other side there, hold onto that axle, and we can start sliding it through. We'll pull this down. Plenty of slack on that ABS wire. Super important. Now that I have the axle pulled out, we're paying attention to this area here. We want to make sure that we're stabilizing this in some way that it's going to put no pressure on our flex hose or our ABS wire. I just have this hook. I'm going to use it around the brake line. You can do pretty much anything you need to. Just keep in mind we are removing the front strut, so we don't want to strap anything to that. Now with that held in place, let's make our way up to where the front sway bar link connects to the front strut. We'll use a 16mm to remove the mounting nut. You can hold the shaft using a 5mm Allen head if necessary. Just going to break this free. Now ours came right off of there. Typically you will have to hold that shaft. This would be in place. Go ahead and slide it out of there. Now we're going to pause inside the wheel well and make our way up inside the engine compartment. Now we're along the side of the engine compartment. This is where we can see our strut tower. We're going to start removing each of our 3 14mm headed mounting nuts. For the first mounting nut, remove it and then start it back on a couple threads. Remove all others. An important note about this, do not remove anything from in the center here. We are not touching this mounting nut underneath this plastic cap. It's extremely dangerous. Now you're going to find that the front strut will move as we continue on with the removal process. Now continuing on, I'm holding onto the front strut from inside of the front wheel well. Up along the top of the engine compartment there, I'm removing that final mounting nut so I can remove the front strut. There it is, friend. Prior to installation of any brand new part, we're going to make sure we clean and inspect the mounting surface up along the top of the front strut tower. You can do up along here. You could also go underneath. Typically, you can just feel along that area right through that center port. If it feels like anything's rusted, rotted, or weak and damaged, you're going to want to service that item. For this, I'm just using a clean rag. We shouldn't have to use any type of detergent. Okay, let's prepare to install that brand new front strut assembly. Up along the top of that front strut, we have 3 studs, and of course those will have to fit into their corresponding ports up in that strut tower. Once we have it in place, go ahead and start on each of your 3 15mm mounting nuts. I'm just trying to feel up along the top here. I can see where that strut's moving around. We'll pivot this as necessary. Now up along the top area here, I'm only going to lightly snug these. We will be torquing them, but for that, we have to have the full weight of the vehicle back on the ground. We have these bottomed out. Let's make our way back into that front wheel well. Now we're going to reattach our front sway bar link to the front strut. If you're reusing your original mounting nut, just use some blue thread locker. Let's get this in place into the front strut. Start on that mounting nut. We're going to snug it up, and then I'm going to torque that to 40 foot-pounds. Now, just like during the removal process, if you find during tightening you have to hold the shaft, use a 5mm Allen head socket if necessary. Now we'll torque this mounting nut to 40 foot-pounds. Now that we have that tightened, we're going to pay attention to our ABS wheel speed sensor wire. We want to make sure we have it going along the back side of the front strut, but along the outside of that sway bar link. It has to be in the proper orientation. Continuing on, we're going to remove the bracket holding our steering knuckle. We'll have to pull this away and slide the axle in and behind the wheel bearing. As that continues through, we're pressing the knuckle into this area, and we can install our 2 mounting bolts coming through from the rear towards the front. We have our axle here. Slide that in. I'm using blue thread locker on each one of my 2 mounting bolts. Watch out for that ABS wheel speed sensor wire as we continue on. On the forward side, we have our 19mm mounting nuts. Just go ahead and start those on. Once you have them started on, we're going to snug them. The torque for each of these is 117 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to hold the bolt head with my wrench here. Got our torque wrench ready. After you've torqued both of these, let's continue on to our front brake flex hose next. That flex hose is going to go directly through this bracket right here. We'll make our way through with the flexible portion of the hose. Continue on with the center bracket portion. You may need to twist this as necessary to get it to fit in. Once you feel as though it's in properly, we'll continue on with our locking clip. Now as for this locking clip, we want to make sure we have the grabbable tab facing inboard. Just go ahead and line that up with the groove on the flex hose and tap it into position. Take hold of the flex hose, confirm it's properly secured to the front strut. Let's move just above that next for the ABS wheel speed sensor wire. We're just going to take this bracket and slide it into position. Once you've heard an audible click, just make sure it's secure, and now we'll make our way on the rearward side, continuing on with the ABS wire. Along this side, we're going to secure the ABS wire to that front strut. Just go ahead and press it into position. Make sure it's secure. We're going to attach the tie rod end to the steering knuckle next. We'll just turn this as necessary. We should be able to slide the tie rod stud up and through. Continue on with your mounting nut. Now we'll tighten that mounting nut and torque it to 43 foot-pounds. Now that I have this torqued, I'm going to make an important note. We've replaced the outer tie rod end. The new tie rod end does not have a port for the cotter pin. If you're reusing your original outer tie rod end, you want to make sure you reinstall a brand new cotter pin. Now we're going to install our axle nut right along the center shaft here. For this, to help prevent this from spinning on us while we continue on, you could use a pry bar angling down towards the ground. Or you could just have a second person inside of the vehicle holding on the brake pedal. Whatever's easiest for you. Now, as far as the axle nut's concerned, you want to replace it. If you're not replacing your axle nut, you at least want to use blue thread locker. I am replacing my axle nut, so I'm going to start this on here. Now, when you go to tighten this, you never want to use an impact tool. We don't want to cause any damage to our wheel bearing. We can snug this up using a hand tool, and then we'll torque it. Now that I have that snug, I'm going to torque this to 180 foot-pounds. Now, one last quick inspection in this area and we can reinstall our wheel. Once you have your wheel in place, start on all 5 of your 21mm lug nuts. Bottom them out, we'll get the wheel safely on the ground and torque each of them to 100 foot-pounds. Now we have the wheel safely on the ground, we're going to be torquing these in a crisscross manner to that 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friend, we showed you the installation of one side of your vehicle's front strut assemblies. The process for one side of the vehicle is the exact same thing as the other. Once you've completed both, because you do them as a pair, take your vehicle for a road test to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.